All right, welcome to Artcasters episode 318. Sorry for the delay, everybody. We're having some technical difficulties across the world there in a couple different places, but um, we're gonna do something a little bit different today, and not do plugs at the beginning. So those of you that are interested in Josh's books, Scott's downloadable stuff, Gary's books, Jim's cartoons, or my random thoughts on Twitter, go to the description of this video or watch the entire show, and at the end, we'll give you all those plugs. Okay, now our topic today, I'm really excited about. Jim, do you want to kick off our topic?
Absolutely. Since I kind of thought of the topic, I think I should. I'm Jim Lujan, and you can find my stuff at, So the topic of today is the Adobe Suite. And is it worth it? Is it not worth it? What are some of the pluses, minuses, just some of the little factoids that those of us that do not currently have it might want to know if we were to invest in it. And for those of you that do have it, would you pay for it if you weren't illegally getting it from the mafia? So,
Okay, so I was thinking that this would be a very interesting topic for a lot of different types of people, and that there isn't a single correct answer. So before we jump into,
I think Gary and I will argue there is, but go ahead.
I would argue that there isn't, and that it's very situational. So I think if you're okay, before we get into whether it is or not, I thought we could spend maybe 20 minutes talking about like what the Creative Cloud is and what the benefits of it as a system and as a suite of apps are, and then we could go into situationally, like if you are an indie comic book illustrator, if you are an indie animator, if you are a student who is entering the workforce and would like to get an in-house job as a graphic designer, a bunch of different situational things, and say, would you go with this or would you go with Affinity or Sketch or Figma or, whatever in each of those kind of different situations. So, Gary, what are some of the benefits of, like, why would you go with Adobe? Like, why is Adobe like the industry standard?
Wow. Well, I think, look, whether you love them or hate them, they're kind of the only game in town when it comes to desktop, creative work.
Yeah.
I would say my look, I think Josh and I, as he alluded, are coming from a similar position where we've had jobs in like graphic design fields, and we've been involved in hiring, and we've supervised graphic designers and things like that. Coming from that, my short answer would be, if you intend to be a working creative professional hired someplace, you're going to have to pony up. Now, which version of Adobe you want, we can debate about, and that's going to depend on what type of creative you are. But I feel like you're going to have to do it. I think that, so the biggest benefit is it's the gold standard. It's kind of the universal thing. When it comes to creatives, that's like the equivalent of Microsoft Office products, and you want to be a white collar person or work in a cubicle. Like, you can't go in to apply for some cubicle job and say, I don't do Word, I don't do Excel, like I use Mac's weird thing, or I found a weird shareware free version on a Pirate Bay, or whatever the thing. Like, that's not going to work. You need to know how to use Microsoft Office. If you're creative, you need to know how to use Adobe.
Yeah.
The downside, the obvious downside, is the cost. And now that it's a subscription model, I think if you want to get all the trimmings, which is the highest tier, which gets you access to all of Adobe's products, it's $50 a month, and that's so $600 a year. That's a lot of money, and like that hurts. That hurts, and they've very cleverly carved it up where if you need even more than like 2 programs, you might as well get all of them.
Right.
Because I think the steal is like Photoshop. Photoshop's something like $10 a month, which is pretty great. Like, Photoshop's a very powerful program. $10 a month is very reasonable, in my opinion. And that allows you to do a lot of things, and even a little bit of digital painting. Not as good as some other things, but not bad. But if you want to add just even one or two other things, like almost every other program in the suite is $20 on its own, a la carte. So if $50 gets you everything very quickly, it doesn't make any sense to try and like get clever about which products you want. And
Yeah.
I think as we talk about it tonight, you'll see like, I bet you almost anyone can find 3 products that would really help them.
Yep.
You know? So once you're there, you're like, all right, now the question is, do you have $50 a month? Or can you be like me, get a job where they go ahead and pick up the tab for you? That's
and that's where I've been sitting at for the last 8 years. Though prior to that, I would buy whatever version of Creative Suite there was every other year. And so when they went to subscription, they're like, it's the same as buying it every year. And I'm like, I didn't buy it every year.
Exactly.
Yeah, to be honest, like you would kind of research it. Like back when you buy it as a package, you kind of research it, and then you'd like see like, is the upgrade worth it? Like I remember even when they first came out with the rotation for Illustrator, like that was a reason to upgrade from like the old CS or whatever, because you're like, okay, that is going to speed up my workflow. Whereas like there were like 2 or 3 upgrades, honestly, like 2 or 3 years where it was just like not really worth it. It's not that big of an improvement. Yeah, that's the downside of the subscription thing, is like you're definitely on the hook.
You're getting, it's like you're getting every version. I remember the same thing. I remember for me, it was when Photoshop rolled out content aware fill.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when they demoed that, I was in a room with a bunch of working graphic designers.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of, first of all, like delighted, where it was like, this is the kind of work that you would normally spend hours doing. And now it's a click. And at the same time, hating that, because it's like, that's normally work you would bill for hours. And now it's a drop down option. Like, and even if it's not perfect, it gets you 95% of the way. So
or like clipping things and clipping mousing things. Yeah. Okay, so I want to go through, and Josh, I want to hear your benefits as well. And I think we'll probably all be on the same page of benefits. All of the native Adobe stuff talks to all of the native Adobe stuff. And so if I were to build an equivalent suite, you can go out there with free stuff, and not like freeware or open source stuff, but stuff that's built by real companies with a vested interest in keeping it good. And you can get equivalent things out there like that, or single purchase things. But what you don't get is I save it in Photoshop, and I know that PSD file will open in any of the other apps. I save it as an AI file. It's a native Adobe file. I know that it'll open in any of the other apps. You don't get that.
Like formats that shouldn't be able to talk, but in Adobe, like you can drag an Illustrator vector into your Photoshop.
Right.
It's like,
so here's the kind of the elephant in the room, though. Okay, like Josh, are you getting it through your work?
Yeah, but like when I freelanced for like 15 years, I just pony up and pay it. Because
was it $50 at the time?
I think toward the end, like it was subscription based, but like at the very beginning, it was like we were talking about, where every 2 or 3 years you'd just have to drop like $1,000 or $2,000 to get the full suite. And then keep in mind, like if you were a student, and I think this still exists. Like if you're a college student and you're like balking at like the cost of the Creative Suite for like the student rates, don't go buy, like get the whole crazy thing, like enjoy it while you can, because it's a lot cheaper.
I get it for my son, who's a student, and also for myself, which is quite a bit more. So
but that student rate is like amazing. And so really like good. One of the things that Corey was kind of touching on that's so essential for it is, not only is it like all the programs that are like substantially different programs, like work really fluidly together. Not only that, but it's kind of equivalent to like, imagine if like there were all kinds of cars on the freeway, and like you had cars where like the steering wheel's on the left, but then you had cars where the steering wheel's like in the back of the car, and then you had cars where steering wheel's on the right of the car, and then like there's cars that are just designed insanely differently, not like they are now where they're all streamlined. So like you have different styles of cars, but they all work on the same freeway with the same laws, right? The same gas input, right? What I'm saying is like there's a benefit if you're trying to streamline processes to having like streamlined designs for those processes. And the great thing about Adobe, that was a really bad analogy, but the point being, the great thing about Adobe is it's very much like when you pull your car up to a gas tank, you know that the gas pump is going to fit in your car tank because everything is designed to do that. There's regulations to make that happen. Adobe has that where you learn the platform for one, and it's very intuitive to pick up other ones. So that's a huge
Josh,
thing.
I don't think really, in my opinion, because right now I don't have it.
Yeah.
The argument wouldn't be the quality of Adobe or how well it works together.
It's cost. Yeah.
To kind of go back to the car analogy, it's like trying to sell somebody all the good points of getting a Tesla. Of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not everybody can afford a Tesla. I mean, I have 3, but
so that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get into in the second half. I kind of want to talk about like what it is, but I think the $600 a year for me is if you take on any client work at all, you easily make that in one job.
Well, and it depends on like Corey's touching on something really important with clients because here's the thing, Gary wasn't joking about it being the gold standard in the industry. So if you get hired by a book company and you send them like illustrations and then they have to do all of the setting it up as PDFs, now their job's harder. Whereas you can actually send it to them as like a print ready PDF following their templates, which are all going to be made in Adobe, right? Like they're going to send you sometimes guides and templates and they're all made in Adobe in vector. And so if you want to cross-check those templates, make sure they're accurate, all of that, what do you need? You need Adobe Illustrator, right? If you're going to do book design and book layout and make all your wonderful images that you've created for this company work, suddenly you're going to have to use InDesign, right? Like there's things that like are industry standards and formats. Like, it's a standard format to turn things in as an AI, as a PSD, right? Like, but if you send them like some weird vector file that they can't open, like it's useless. It's as useless to the client, as it is for yourself. So it's like for your own personal work, sure, work and whatever. But when you're working with other people and especially big companies, Gary's not kidding in the sense of like, so far there hasn't been like a game-changing thing like what happened with I'm trying to think of like
Quark.
Quark. Quark used to be the industry standard for all book layouts. So if you didn't know Quark, like you're screwed in books, like or in magazines, or if you're doing catalogs or anything like that. Like you had to learn all of the Adobe stuff, but you also had to learn Quark. And then Adobe came and introduced InDesign, and that became the industry standard. There hasn't been like a paradigm shift like that with Adobe. They've just kept the ground.
Right. But on the other hand, you're also splitting your audience in half by kind of saying that, because you're talking to professional artists who are sending things in. There's a whole legion of people out there. In fact, I'd say most people aren't professional artists and don't send their stuff in. So what are those people supposed to do if they can't afford Photoshop and they can't afford, Premiere and all the other things like that? There's no option other than Corey's going to say right now.
No,
Corey.
I feel like I'm Switzerland, because I think Jim, you and Scott and myself, we could use anything.
Yeah.
Right? And then me and Gary and Josh also almost have to use Adobe, because I just in the two worlds where I float back and forth. From a client standpoint, if somebody came to me and they wanted an image or an animation, I'm going to deliver the image or the animation to my client, because the type of clients that I have, they don't care what I made it in.
Yeah.
But when I'm collaborating, or when I'm in-house, or when I'm plugging into an advertising agency, they do care.
So Adobe's kind of taken the novice user out of the game, kind of.
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why.
Or for $50 they have. I'll tell you, yes, they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So here's the thing, like just like anything, like if you want to be an oil painter, right? Like there's specific kinds of oil paints that are a million times better to paint with. And most professional oil painters are going to be using that like paint that's like super expensive. Like it's like 40 bucks, 50 bucks a tube. Like the guys who are like really serious about oil painting. Now there's exceptions, right? Like there's guys like who'll throw stuff together with like tempera and they don't care. Like you know, there's painters who are like painting with like cheap brushes. Maybe they even like that look. But in general, like most serious oil painters are going to they're going to drop some cash on materials. It's the same. You're in a similar situation with this where it's like, I don't think that no one should take this like in the extent of like, hey, if you're poor and you can't afford Adobe, too bad, you're crap out of luck. Take it as more of like a when you start getting serious about graphic design and illustration, this is just a cost of doing business.
Though
like,
I would,
By the way,
though
I'm going to edit that quote, Josh, and I'm going to cut out just the part where you say, if you're
poor, you're out of luck.
I would say, I think just to piggyback on that, it's a little like, I think, we'll see if you guys all agree, but the feature set with each Adobe product is pretty amazing. And that is the one thing, like every year, like there's always like amazing new things that each program can do, much easier and much better than it ever did before. And it's always adding new features, and that's very cool. But then it becomes a question of like, are you the kind of user who's really going to plumb those depths?
Yeah.
So like to me, the equivalent would be like, let's say I want to sell computers. Like there's two kinds of users. There's people who just want to surf the internet and check email, and that's a certain kind of computer. Then there's some really amazing computers out there that depending on what you want to be doing with your computer, yeah, you would want that.
Yeah.
I think if someone is getting by with like some kind of, you know, free paint program on their iPad or some, you know, like some digital painter, or if they're making it work, maybe Adobe doesn't make sense. But if you really want to get into the weeds, you know, and really start doing kind of crazy things and pushing, like, and doing like exotic stuff, that's where I think like that $50 a month is worth it.
And that's where I think the situational aspect of this answer comes in.
Yeah.
Because there are professional illustrators that don't have an Adobe account because they're using Clip Studio Paint or Procreate or you know, whatever the Fireworks eventually became. There's a bunch of stuff out there that you can do: digital painting, digital illustration, digital layout.
Yeah.
On, and it isn't Adobe, but they're the type of people who are not plugging into a system. So I think for Jim, I think you could not do Adobe, and you'd probably find equivalent stuff out there.
Yeah.
And the last half of this, I kind of want to go into some suggestions and things. Like Paul Pate.
I right now do use Adobe. But my Adobe's so old, it's actually made out of Adobe. It's super, super, super old. I think Paul said he's using CS3. I am as well, believe it or not.
Yeah,
and
I was
by hardcore.
Dude, Jim, you know what's cool though? Like, I was actually going to bring that up. Like, just as we're kind of getting into this too, it's important to kind of preface this with like the software rarely is going to say anything about your skill. There was this big thing at like I think it was almost like 10 years ago, but this was a big shock in the digital design world. There's an illustrator who's done like tons of New Yorker covers named Bob Stack, and he's like legendary and has been in like all these computer arts magazines back when that was a thing, and he was like on like Digital Art Today and like look at digital stuff. And then I think that like he finally started showing people his process, and he pulled up Illustrator 2. It's like it's not even like CS or anything like that. It was like the second not Illustrator, sorry, Photoshop 2. So it's the second version of Photoshop, and he had been using it for like close to 20 years. That's like, and just doing like these beautiful, brilliant illustrations that were like just smoking everybody in the field on like an old version of it. So like, I do agree with like what Scott's saying, where, sorry, not Scott, what Corey was saying about I think it's important to like preface with like, especially if you're your own artist and you're not having to work with teams and like share your stuff, and like iterate like as a like on a team and like with servers and like, and you know, in a design company or like animation in-house where like everybody, although honestly I think they use different programs too. I think it's just one of those things, like it's totally possible to get by without Illustrator, but if I'm hiring as an art director or like without if somebody doesn't know Adobe, I don't have time to teach somebody Adobe. Like I don't. I have to teach them all of our processes, all of our internal processes. And so like that would be a job, you know.
Definitely Adobe, I think, is important if you're the sort of creative that's going to be like I like the word we're using, interfacing with other creatives. Yeah, I think then it's like you're going to have a lot of frustration if you're not using and comfortable with using Adobe, and therefore you might have to pony up. But the other thing is just in sheer competitiveness. Going back to the example of content-aware fill. I'm a graphic designer. You're a graphic designer, like Josh. Let's say, and Josh, you're carrying the torch for CS3. Like you're not like you're just. I'm not upgrading. No, screw it. I'm not doing it anymore. But I did. Client comes around and says, like, I have this picture of my family in the park. There's a car in the back. I want it removed. How much would that cost? I know I can do it through a drop down. I'll charge them for an hour. You're going to have to sit and, you know, select and paint that out. You're either going to lose money on it or you're going to have to charge them more.
Yep.
Like, so that's another example of like, what kind of user are you? This is maybe getting into that second part. Depending on the type of user, you kind of have to. Like you're, or if you want to be competitive, if you want to be a working professional, like in certain spheres.
Gary, you literally look like you're talking to somebody in the room, saying that to them. Like somebody's just going to walk in the back and be all right, Gary, all right.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, so that people who don't know what we're talking about can know what we're talking about. I'm gonna do this, and you guys jump in.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Shoot.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, now there we go.
That's
now
even
we
better.
go.
All right.
My screen to go to sleep. Oh, and now my mouse doesn't work. Fantastic. All right. So these are the ones that I have installed on my computer. Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat, InDesign, Premiere, After Effects, Dimension, Character Animating, Media Encoder, Camera Raw. And I could also install, if I wanted to, I could also install XD, Lightroom, Rush, Bridge.
Okay, I was
Dreamweaver.
like, "Where's Bridge here? Come on, we want to automate some." Some
Bridge. Come on, Bridge. I hate Bridge.
Animate, Audition, and a couple I don't even know. So the big ones: Photoshop, Illustrator, and then the third big one is going to depend on your role.
Yeah.
For me, it's After Effects. For other people, it's InDesign. And it kind of switches between those two, or sometimes Premiere.
Like Jim, it would be Premiere Pro, probably.
I would say Jim is either going to go with Animate, which is Adobe's PR move to pretend like Flash is dead. Really, all they did was just wrap Flash into a new branding thing and give it the ability to do HTML5. But let's talk about these really fast. So Photoshop does pixel-based work. It was initially intended to edit photographs. They added some features so that it would be you could do some illustration in it. It has since grown into a fully digital painting suite in and of itself, and you can basically do anything. It has become a verb where if any editing happens to a still image, you would call that photoshopping. I photoshopped that image.
Right.
Illustrator is like that, except it's vector based, and that just means that it's a more mathematical situation. So instead of having a pixel grid of colors going on, you have Boolean curves and vertices and points and things.
Yeah, and to kind of explain the curves and points and stuff like that, what that means is like on Photoshop, if you zoom in, right, you're going to see eventually a bunch of squares and pixels, right, on your art. It's raster. If you zoom in on Illustrator, in theory, if you had endless memory on your computer, you could just keep zooming Like there's never a point where you'll stop zooming. Like
I believe the maximum is 64,000%.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's with no pixelization, which makes it really attractive when it comes to printing.
Yep.
Because you can print any size. You don't ever have to worry about, your resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then InDesign is a book layout program or a magazine layout program. And so if you're working in a multiple page document like a catalog, a novel, graphic novel, ebooks, things like that, InDesign works with text. It adds automatic pagination. You can do indexes, glossaries, table of contents, and it has what used to be called master pages, which are now called parent pages because the term master has kind of like a master slave thing. So they're getting rid of that. And so you have parent pages and child pages where you design it once and you say, apply this to all the left facing pages. And you design another one and you say, apply this to all the right facing pages. You design a third one, you say, apply this to the beginning of each chapter. And then it's always the same. It's very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a program, and I love that Josh says this because I used to do the same thing when I was an art director. It's a program that Josh says that he learns once a year to do the thing. And I used to do the same thing. Whenever the catalog was coming out, I was like, all right, got to brush off my InDesign skills and figure out how that program works again. But I feel like it's an East Coast, West Coast thing. A lot of East Coast graphic designers prefer InDesign to Illustrator. And a lot of West Coast graphic designers prefer Illustrator to InDesign. It's kind of an industry thing, but it also seems to be like a coastal time zone type thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a functionality thing too. Each thing has kind of their own strengths and weaknesses. If you're doing a lot of like very grid based graphic design, that's going to be mostly like maybe play with like layout, then like I could understand somebody being like, I'm going to do designs in InDesign. I think if you're going to start getting into like customizing typography and like really pushing the grid and doing more, especially illustrative type work, then obviously Illustrator is going to be like your thing.
Yeah, I have to be honest. If I was talking to another artist and they said they were doing their work in InDesign, I think I would recoil.
Yeah, I would throw up in my mouth a little
bit.
I would
be really kind of confused.
Here's what's really interesting about those three programs, which used to be referred to as the design suite, because back when you purchased these individually or in packages, you could get the design suite or the photography suite or the book suite. But each one of these, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, each one can do vector graphics, and each one can do raster or pixelated graphics. But you wouldn't want to edit a photo in Illustrator, even though it does that. It's a stupid thing to do because Photoshop exists.
Just like it would be insane to set type in Photoshop.
Yeah. Right. But if you are an indie comic book illustrator and you can only afford or only want to pay one $10 subscription a month, you could technically do all of the vector balloons, all of the type, and all of your digital illustration in Photoshop if you wanted to.
It could be done. And I think that's a good, if we're going to make a huge creative category of just Illustrator type creatives, and and you're on a tight budget, a $10 a month Photoshop thing is not bad, and that'll let you do a lot of things. I agree.
Yeah.
It's not ideal for a lot. You can even do animation in Photoshop.
Yes, and Illustrator. You can do animation in both Illustrator and Photoshop.
I mean, it's gonna, some of it's, but you won't know what you're missing, I guess. So you won't realize how much it sucks. But you could do it. You could.
Okay. Yeah. So then, if you're getting into the video and animation side of things, then you're looking at Premiere Pro. Is a video editor. It is probably, I would say, the weakest app in the Adobe suite.
That's a bold statement.
By the way, would it be a good time to interject? We are literally speaking. None of us are sponsored I just wanted to clarify that.
Right,
None of us are sponsored by Adobe, although I think most of us would be happy to have that
To
sponsorship.
take an Adobe
But
sponsorship.
like,
Yeah, you bet.
yeah,
I
like
have-
none of us
I
have a
have,
dog in this fight in that sense, you know?
I have pitched them and been shot down.
Yeah.
But yeah, Premiere Pro, I would say, is the weakest because in video editing, or what they call NLE, nonlinear editing, there are significantly better and significantly stronger programs that are actually industry standard video editing software. Premiere is not an industry standard video editing software. But because it's part of the Adobe suite, a lot of people use it. It's a good program, but I would say DaVinci Resolve, which is free and made by Blackmagic, who makes cameras. They give that away for free because they say, hey, you buy our camera, which is expensive, and our lenses, which are expensive. Here's the software, so you don't need to pay for anything else. And they keep it up, and it is a significantly better program. And most of the professionals that I know are using DaVinci Resolve or several other, like what's the one that starts with an A? Anyway, there's other software out there. But if
like
you
a
are,
lot of people favor Final Cut, right? Like
Final Cut used to be industry standard until they made a move towards prosumer. So Final Cut 9 was really good and everybody loved it. And then Final Cut X was a move where they tried to embrace like what iMovie was doing. And it kind of alienated their core audience. And so that was actually the death of that being the professional standard. So Final Cut used to be, but I think well, it probably was like 2015 or something, maybe even earlier. They kind of screwed themselves over. They still exist and they're fine. But if you are just looking for, I want some cuts and some cross dissolves, and I want to be able to do a hard cut or a cross dissolve, and that's the type of video editing you're doing, and you want to sync up sound and do some color correction, literally almost anything, including iMovie and whatever comes packaged with a Windows program, will do that for you. There are online editors now that'll do it. YouTube has its own editor that's embedded. It is garbage and one of the worst programs I've ever used, but it's browser based. And so there's a lot of stuff out there. DaVinci Resolve, if you want to get into video editing, is free and incredible.
I'm writing that down. I'm curious about it. I've never heard of it. I use Premiere a lot, mostly for my day job, slightly for YouTube. And my impression of it is it's maybe the least intuitive of all the Adobe products.
Mine too.
It feels like it kind of, and it's interesting when they add features, the new features are phenomenal, in my opinion.
Right.
And it's built on this like foundation of just old, weird, wonky technology, where it just makes the base of it stand out. It's like it shines a very harsh light on the rest of the program. They'll add this feature that's like, well, if the whole thing kind of worked like this thing you just added, that would be awesome.
I'll tell you exactly my problem with it. In every other program that Adobe makes, if I want to move something, if I want to move a layer, I click and drag it and it moves.
Yeah.
In Premiere, if I want to move a layer, I literally have to go into the settings and type in an XY coordinate or click and drag on the XY coordinates. And so if I want to move it all the way to the other side of the screen, I have to click and drag several times.
Yeah.
And it slides over pixel by pixel as if it's 1986 or something. It is the dumbest. Anyway, it's fine. And it's the one
fine. You can do,
yeah.
I mean, at least for my modest purposes, like again, day job and YouTube, I'm able to do anything I want to do in it. And if anything you can think of, you're like, well, how would you do that? Just like any other program these days, you can find a thing on YouTube. Some 13-year-old will explain how to do it. And you know, it's like it can do anything.
Yeah.
But it's just clunky. It feels like all the like Illustrator to me. I love Illustrator. It's probably my favorite of all the Adobe products. It's the one I'm in most of the time. That to me makes sense. Photoshop makes sense. Like all the other programs, like I get it. I understand how this all puzzles together. Premiere is one that every time I'm in there, it just feels like an unintuitive nightmare.
Premiere is the one that if I dip into, I find myself often having to watch tutorials more than I like, because the
Right.
thing I love about the Adobe format is, again, if you learn one, like you learn Photoshop, which is a good start, then picking up Illustrator isn't that far of a stretch.
Right.
And then if you pick up Illustrator and Photoshop, like After Effects is pretty intuitive. And then, like InDesign is pretty intuitive. It's all stuff where you can play and fail and learn.
Right.
And Premiere's the one where I don't feel the freedom to play, because quite often, until I look something up, I'm just like, I have no idea. And there's
Yeah.
no like playing to get there.
What it reminds me of is when I was learning Flash, like when Flash was the thing, where Flash had that same kind of inscrutable, strange layer in front of it, where it's like, I don't know, I don't even understand what I'm looking at in this workspace.
So with almost any piece of software I've ever tried to learn, I can watch somebody do something and then do a project that kind of uses those skills, and then I can learn the software from there.
Yeah.
I tried that with Flash. Flash makes absolutely no sense. I was actually talking to the software engineer that is in charge of the Flash developers that are now Adobe Animate developers.
Right.
And they invited me to be part of the alpha testing group because okay.
Because you're an alpha?
It's too long of a story, but the gist is they rolled out this really sweet piece of software called Edge Animate. And it was when Flash was still in its heyday, and Edge Animate came out, and I loved it. It was built from the ground up. Almost every Adobe product is something that they bought and then bastardized, and it's mutated since then.
Yeah.
And some of them have mutated better than others, But Edge Animate was this clean, from the ground up piece of software, and it was so beautiful, and I loved it. And I did a major animated project for my master's degree in it, and it spit out HTML5 and JavaScript, and so you could have animation on the internet that didn't have, like, nobody had to install anything. Everything was browser based, and the scripts were it was beautiful, and the interface was very intuitive. And so when they killed that, and they said, we're getting rid of this, but don't worry, we're gonna take this, and we're killing Flash, and we're gonna build a new one called Adobe Animate. And what they did, which will be great for people like Jim, is they took Flash and they scrubbed the word Flash off of it, like filed off the serial number, and then just with a Sharpie they wrote Animate CC on the side, and then gave it the ability to spit out not just FLFs, but now it can also spit out HTML5 animations. That is the only thing that they kept from Edge Animate, this beautiful thing that no one has any idea what I'm talking about when I bring it up.
Is that what the CC stands for? Copycat?
Yeah, exactly. But if you are so I was talking to the guy, and I said, let me tell you what you did wrong. And I did a 20-minute long video about the user interface between the new Animate CC and Edge Animate, telling them why they got it right here and got it wrong here. And after that, we had several fairly long conversations about it without throwing anybody under the bus. There are tens of thousands of Flash animators out there that had Stockholm syndrome and had bought into this this kind of structure. And they said, we can teach everybody a new thing, or we've already got a user base that exists, and they will feel very comfortable with this janky piece of crap that we've just... Anyway, so Animate has gotten a lot better. And when it comes to animation, many professional studios use Animate CC. So like Nickelodeon, Adult Swim, a lot of the shows that are on those two channels, Cartoon Network, are made in Animate CC. After Effects... Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, it has really nice built-in tutorials too. I fooled with Animate a little bit, and I was surprised I was impressed by how, compared to a lot of other Adobe programs, how much effort is built into it to try and handhold you into how to make some basic things.
I think it's because it would be like taking a generation of people who were raised on smartphones and saying, this is a computer from 1984 before mouses existed.
Right.
So let me just build this really nice tutorial to teach you how to do DOS prompt command script.
Right.
Because I mean, that's what you're doing basically, is they have to, with the marketing kind of come. Now for Jim, I've said this a number of times to Jim offline. I think he should use Animate because he's already familiar with Flash. I want him to learn After Effects because I want more After Effects animators in the world, and I love it. But actually, if he were to just like get a new computer and turn it on today, Animate would feel almost exactly like what you're doing now, but smoother and nicer and faster. But the interface is based on what you're currently using.
Yeah, I feel like that would be an easy transition, Flash to Animate.
Yeah.
One of my goals in the year 2000 was to learn After Effects. I'm not even kidding. I bought a book, After Effects for Dummies, probably in the year 2000. I just never, and the closest I got to using it was watching Corey, when we did an Unchained Aggression, our project together.
Which is probably a terrible introduction to After Effects.
I don't know. Well, because we were also, there was other elements we were putting together too, so it really wasn't like a straight tutorial on After Effects. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Personally, the reason why a lot of these questions are coming up about the Adobe Suite is because I'm going to be upgrading my computer, which means I'm going to be saying bye-bye to my current setup. So I'm going to have to get something from scratch. And speaking of scratch, $50 a month.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of scratch, but and it's worth it in certain circumstances. It's worth it, but I also feel like, well, am I jumping into a Tesla when I could have got a Honda?
So like Adam brought up in the chats, and I'm glad he did, because I have a friend who teaches like high school art, and it's at like a school that didn't have the funding. I think we had him on. And there are a couple like very Photoshop equivalent programs out there, one of them being GIMP. And they're really close. The interface is really close. And if you're like, I'm not saying you, Jim, but I'm just saying if like somebody's watching this and they're in a pinch, and they don't have like the, $10 a month or whatever for Photoshop, it's like, I think that's a good starting point. There are all these programs out there that approximate it. But Jim, like for you, I think it would be well worth it. Like I maybe I'm wrong, but I have a suspicion that the Creative Cloud, like Gary was talking about. Okay, my good example. My wife was a very late adopter to like digital art. She was doing most kids' books like traditionally watercolored and stuff like that. And then in the last like year or so, she's gotten like this mass uptick in work, and had to kind of adjust to like digitally painting her kids' books. And like, so I encouraged her to do the Creative Suite and stuff like that. And she knew it a little bit, but not really. And within the process of a year, just with like working with freelance clients, she's gone from like just paying the Photoshop subscription to like, oh, I need InDesign, I need Photoshop, I need Illustrator, I need the bigger package. And it's mainly because the second you see the intuitive, like how quickly you can do revisions, or like Gary was talking about with like, I mean, you can delete parts out of a photo and it'll autofill. Like there's things that like cut your workflow time, so you can work like twice as fast, And I'm a slow artist, so it's like, imagine if anybody's familiar with my streams, it's like, imagine my workflow slowed down by like half. That's what it would be without Adobe. Which
so you can only have the Creative Suite on. Well, I have two questions.
Yeah.
On one computer.
It's just I get the Rockstar one because I'm an AD, so we got a Rockstar one, and then I got.
Yeah. It technically, the license technically says it can be installed on two computers, and the idea is that you have a desktop and a laptop, but. It actually can be installed on an infinite number of devices. You just can't work on more than two concurrently.
Yeah, if you work on more than two, then you're going to have bugs happen.
Because now,
Yeah.
I might
Because
be able
now
to save
it's-
myself some money.
Yeah, because now it's cloud based, and they're doing a lot of stuff. So I've only gone over the desktop stuff. I didn't go over the mobile
Oh yeah.
stuff. The stuff that they're doing mobile initially was the worst steaming pile of hot garbage on the App Store.
We were really late to the party too.
They were late and they showed up drunk and already sloppy. It was bad. But Fresco is phenomenal. It is one of the best illustration programs on the iPad.
Fresco is yeah.
But that's not the Adobe, is it?
It is. It's Adobe, and I love it. And you can animate on it. That was
Is
the
it
one
part
I
of the
was.
suite?
Yeah, it's part of the suite, and so that was the one, Jim, that I was showing you at lunch. I was like, "Hey, check this out on the iPad."
But with the watercolors.
Yeah, well, not just it's the one that does the watercolors, but it also they added the Photoshop animation timeline to Fresco, and so you can do rotoscoping, you can do frame by frame traditional animation.
So Corey, if theoretically, if I got the Creative Cloud, the full Creative Cloud, I could have it on a laptop and have some programs on my iPad.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to the mobile, I'll take you through which ones are terrible and which ones are good here. I'll go real fast here.
Yeah.
So Photoshop has gotten better on the iPad. They claimed that it was going to be a full version. It's not, but it's good. Illustrator, I would probably go with something else, though it's gotten a little bit better. A bunch of these are just dumb things. Premiere Rush is like if you want to be an influencer and you don't know how to edit video, Premiere Rush is like a stupid, dumbed down, watered down version of Premiere. Fresco is amazing. Arrow is going to be really interesting. They just released this. It's for building augmented reality stuff. Capture is one of my favorite things. You can have this on your phone. You can have it on your iPad or whatever. You point it at something and it'll take a picture of it and it'll save the color palette of that thing into your library, which will show up in any of the Adobe programs. And so if you go to Capture and you're like, that book cover is amazing, you take a photo of it, it'll save the color palette, and then you open Photoshop on your desktop or Fresco on your iPad or Illustrator on your laptop or whatever, and that thing that you captured will show up as a thing. I love Capture. Capture is awesome. Spark is the thing that you give your grandma so that you don't have to do stuff for her. She's like, hey, I want you to design you say, hey, let me show you a Spark video or a Spark page. And it's the kind of templated prefab stuff. Behance is their attempt at a social media network. It's okay. I like it. XD is really good. It's basically Adobe Illustrator, except it is for versioning and UX UI. And so it's team based. So a team of people can program a website, designing it in XD. XD has become like the UX UI thing. By the way, if you're only in this for the money, this isn't talking to Jim, this is talking to anybody. Get into UX UI right now because you can right out of school start making 100,000K or more. It's crazy right now. It's insane.
I will say though, like just coming from the standpoint of like an art director that's working more traditionally, if you're only specialized in UX UI, stop applying for graphic design jobs that are traditional graphic design, because I don't need you to make an app. I need you to be able to make typography and draw and code. Absolutely. And I have to say, like, I'm not kidding. This is coming from a standpoint of like, I've been reviewing resumes recently, and that's like one of the big things is like almost everybody coming out of college right now is UX UI, and and I will tell you, there's a giant gap where like graphic designers are needed still, and traditional art is still needed. So, so keep that in mind. Like, if you want to draw stuff, and all that fun stuff for a living, then maybe have that in your portfolio.
I have really heavy opinions on UX UI that I probably shouldn't say on the air, but I will say it is a thing that has always existed in graphic design. It's not new, but somebody took it and repackaged it and made it a discipline.
Right.
And now it feels new to everybody in Northern California. And so if you're getting a job in tech, then UX UI is very useful. But it's a methodology that basically you do user testing and think about the purpose of what you're designing. But if you don't have any of the other skills, what's that?
It's very narrow, I think, is the
Yes.
thing. Like, it's definitely an interesting field, and I see a lot of contemporaries of mine who were like illustrators or other things who
Yeah.
are now going back to try and learn it because they feel that's like the thing to know.
Yeah.
But I think, and whatever the topic, like when it comes to being a working creative, versatility is always like the most important thing. So don't go totally down one track of UX UI. Like, I mean, it's a good, interesting thing, but also learn how to do some other things so Josh can hire you.
Yeah. And also, like, another thing to keep in mind too, and this goes for Adobe too. And notice at the top of this, like, I think I mentioned the paradigm shift hasn't happened yet, but it could. And it's important for even people like Gary and I, like, who are very adamantly in love with Adobe, to be adaptable in the sense of, like, if tomorrow Adobe was not the thing, we're going to have to, like, have those core skills and the adaptability to kind of pick up a new thing.
I will,
that's a key thing.
For the record, I don't know if I would say in love with Adobe. But you know what it's like? It's like, I like Fruit Loops. Yep. I don't want the big bag of fruity Dino Bites, like the 5-gallon bag that's up high in the cereal aisle that's sort of like Fruit Loops. I want Fruit Loops. And like, because the Fruit Loops it's scratching the itch. Adobe does the things I need it to do. I know where to find things, does them well, and I'm happy with it. If there were other options and cheaper options that were, you know, I thought not just fruity Dino Bites, but actually like just as good, I would do that.
Yeah.
My experience, I've tried a lot of the programs that are trying to compete. It's no fault of theirs. It's very hard to break in when Adobe's been doing the same thing for so long, but it feels like fruity Dino Bites compared to Fruit Loops.
There are several that I think could be Illustrator killers or Photoshop killers that are so good that I think they've done it better than Photoshop or Illustrator.
By the way, Fruity Dino Bites is the name of Gary's next book.
That's right.
So,
he has it tattooed on his lower back.
I really am upset we got rid of the plugs right off the top. So, guys, everybody, D versus M : Fruity Dino Bites.
Fruity Dino Bites,
coming next month.
It's actually never mind. Okay. So I was going to make a fruity joke with it.
Oh, yeah, please don't. Let's not get canceled tonight.
This is a serious show.
All right. So let's get into scenarios, because I think this could be helpful at this point. I do want to also mention that there are also web-based things that come with the Creative Suite, and the web-based things you get, they license hundreds of different fonts that you have access to now. And there's stock photography, which I think is not worth it, but they have a very good. There's a thing, I know several of the people at Adobe. And there's a thing called Adobe Sensei, which is their AI, so their deep learning algorithm.
It's basically their algorithm that's going to replace all of us.
Right, and it is actively trying to replace us. But I have heard several of their people say it's not a single thing. It's just, if anything, kind of in that world, and they don't know what to call it. It's called Adobe Sensei. It's the term that kind of envelops all of the machine learning that they're doing. But
how does that relate to Photoshop's neural filters?
Yes, so neural filters are part of that, but also like the stock images. If you go in on traditional stock sites and you say, I want a blonde girl riding a horse, if somebody hasn't gone in and tagged their photo correctly with the correct search terms, then you're not going to find it. But in Adobe stock, because of their deep learning, you can actually say, I'd like a medium shot of somebody facing to the left on a white horse, and it will find that image for you.
Corey, you are part of the robot problem. Okay?
I am. I know.
Yes.
Okay, and then there's Adobe Color is totally free, and everybody should use it. If you don't know color theory, go to color.adobe.com right now, and don't choose your own colors randomly. Your illustrations, animations, designs will get immediately better just by going to that website and using what's there. It is phenomenal, and it follows actual color theory schemes and rules, and you can go plug stuff in. And if you have like one color that you want to use, then you can go through to Adobe Color and you can go and it'll give you all the other stuff.
Did you say is that free already for everybody?
It's already free. You could go there right now.
Maybe you could put a link in the notes. I want to check that out.
Yeah, it's just.
And before I forget, I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
You know how you said you could have it on infinite machines as long as you're not using it at the same time?
Yeah.
Do you know, does using it at the same time entail like being logged on?
Yes. I think it's like if you had, so it's not being logged onto the Creative Suite, but if you open Photoshop, this is part of the nefarious part of the Creative Cloud, which I think we should get into that too, a little bit of the negatives too. I don't know if we're there yet, but what happens is if I were like, let's say I was at Gary's or something and had Photoshop opened on one of his computers, but my account was logged in. And then I went to my house and I opened it and it's like, okay, now I have Photoshop opened on Gary's computer and on my computer. Now, if like Scott were to say have it on his computer, same account, he opens it up, all of them fail. Like it's a weird thing that happens. And it's literally because, and this is one of the downsides of the Creative Cloud, is as you're working, you are constantly communicating to the cloud. Like your computer is communicating to the cloud. And if it can't, you have trouble logging on. Like
Josh, if you, in theory, because this is actually something I would do. Let's just say you had Photoshop open on your desktop at home and you left it open.
Yep.
And then you're at work, you open it at work and you're using it. That's not a problem.
That's not a problem.
The second you bring in a third,
that's actually what I'm doing all the time. Like, so day job, I'm using both the same license for my day job and for my comic work.
Yeah,
and like I don't shut computers down. Like I always just sleep, put them in sleep, and like so I know right now, like Adobe is open in my office in downtown Phoenix, and I have it open right now on this desktop, and it's like it's fine.
So here's a really good example. I have a laptop from work where I'm logged into Adobe. I've got my PC at my home studio where I'm logged into Adobe, and I teach in a classroom. If I log into the teacher station in that classroom, all three of them will fail, and it'll give me a warning. So to do that, I either have to log out of one of those two to log in, or do what I do and just say, you're going to get an account for this teacher station because I'm.
All right, so
log in and log out.
Adobe salesman, you guys. This might be the turning point here. Let's see. In theory, I could get Photoshop on my iPad.
Sure.
And instead of using Procreate, let's say I could draw my animations in Photoshop.
You could.
Yeah.
And it would upload to the cloud. Yep. Then I can go to my laptop and just pull them from there pretty seamlessly and animate them in Animate.
Yeah. I will tell you the one annoying thing about that is when I'm working in Fresco or Photoshop which both use a PSD file, I can very easily laptop, desktop, and iPad in those two programs. Just pick up whichever one I want with very little delay. Sometimes 30 seconds, but that's because some of the files I'm working on are huge, right? And so very little delay on that. And if there's a conflict, like one is uploading while you're opening out another one, it just creates a duplicate of that file. And so you don't like destroy it or whatever. But as soon as I want to animate that stuff, and this is a huge downside for me for Adobe Creative Cloud, I cannot put that artwork into After Effects without downloading it to my computer first. So I have to take it from the cloud, download it to my computer, and then I can animate with it.
That sort of makes sense, though. I think
it does, but it also pisses me off.
I get it, and that's what I do now. Right now I'm uploading from Procreate into my laptop into Photoshop actually, and then pulling it from Photoshop into Flash and animating it. So now that would cut out if I'm drawing it in Photoshop, which I really wouldn't mind because Photoshop has a lot of brushes and stuff that are.
Yeah, it's not bad.
They actually Kyle Webster, who's he made like six figures the first 5 minutes that he launched his brush pack, and then has done amazing things since then. Yeah. He is now fully owned by Adobe. I think they like lock him up at night and everything. And
his
all
brush packs are amazing.
Oh my
they're
gosh,
incredible.
yeah, like the thing that I've been doing recently on streams, like it's a book about the Brownings, and it's being
Yeah.
done in like a pencil rendering kind of style, and all I'm using is Kyle Webster's like hard pencil. It's like you get so much range with that. It's
Yeah.
insane.
And
I almost
you don't have to, but they're all very customizable. Like if you want them to behave a little differently, they're all, you can go in and mess with any of them. But the sheer number, like it's overwhelming. And they're all like, if you have it, you can if you're a subscriber, you can download all of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of different brushes, completely, like you can do anything you want. Like it's
And in order to use these, I have to become a Scientologist?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
all you have to do is just get rid of, like, well, no, like, to be honest, Jim, you start with some personality tests. We don't want to go too far, right?
Be very clear right
do
now.
you have the $10 a month? The question is, do you really want thetans in your body?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you had our acting class, Jim, and it's helped you like make friends. And I mean, you've made a lot of friends within our community, and it would just be a shame if something happened to that community.
So I'll tell you. So here's some things to consider. You'd have all the brushes that you want, right? I personally, I don't necessarily think that you have to do Adobe. You specifically, I think, could easily go with a number of other options. So let's talk about, and this might be, Josh, where like cons come in.
Yeah.
Let's talk about alternatives to Adobe in situations. So the first situation, just because we're kind of talking to Jim, animation, right? Now there are some Photoshop or what I would say some illustration alternatives that are very good. Procreate is one of them. Affinity Designer is one of the best iPad apps that has come out ever. And it does both what Illustrator does and what Photoshop does in the one app. And so you have some layers that are vector layers and some layers that are raster layers. It's a $50 purchase one time, no subscription for the desktop and $30 for the iPad. And so for under $100, you could put one on your iPad, one on your desktop, and you'd be done paying anybody anything forever. And that comes with all of the updates. They are very good. The brush engine is really nice, an infinite number of layers. It doesn't do everything that either of those programs do, but it does the core stuff really, really well. So like if you're into like blending two shapes together to get kind of like that kind of blending curve or whatever, it doesn't do that type of stuff. But it's got masks, it's got layers, it's got all the different brushes that you can put in there and everything. And that's a great one. On the Illustrator side, you've got Figma, you've got Sketch, you've got Inkscape, which is, I think at this point in time, kind of null and void, a little janky, but it's free and it's fine and it's open source. But all the open source stuff for me, I feel like is kind of semi-employed programmers in Europe. Kind of just, there's like a community of people that are either anarchists or just people that are really into, QAnon or something. I'm just kidding, but there's a distinct community around it, and not a lot of them are interested in making a slick interface. They're like, we'll just use command prompt for it, or
like
whatever.
they're coding the art software, and then they're turning around and checking on their Bitcoin mine, right?
Right.
They're
Well,
Linux,
I feel like
they've got a Linux box and they're, like it's all the same crowd.
If you've ever used a program built by programmers for programmers, there's a huge difference in that workflow where it's all programmers. There's a huge difference between that type of interface and an interface where like it's built by programmers for the rest of humanity.
Yep.
And a lot of the open source stuff, including Blender, feels to me like built by programmers for programmers. Once you learn that, then you're good to go, right? But
what is he animating in then?
So you can animate.
Here's right now. So you're using Flash, Jim?
Yeah. Right now, I'm drawing everything in Procreate and then just importing it into Flash. as a Photoshop document and then just moving it around in Flash. So I literally don't draw anything in Flash.
So I'm trying to think, so what would a animation equivalent?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
It is the best news that's come out in the last 2 years for animation. It's called OpenToons, and it's based on a program called Toons, which was an open source software that Studio Ghibli got a hold of and made their own version of it and released it for free. And it's called OpenToons. And so
do you know if it's intuitive at all?
No idea. The reports say that it's a little counterintuitive because it's kind of like one of those internal animation studio things. Like if I were to go to DreamWorks and pick up, their pipeline workflow or whatever, it's for programmers by programmers.
I have the strongest feeling that Toons is spelled with a Z, isn't it?
It is spelled with a Z.
I knew it. Jim, don't do it. Don't go there.
Okay. There's also I think it's.
Wait. Are we saying that cheap animation software and 90s fusion hip hop rock bands have the same misspelling thing?
It's Studio Ghibli though. It's not. It's not like
Ghibli's not a deep cut. Yeah, that's
I mean it's not like it's not like it's Moral Oral on Adult Swim or something.
I feel weird now because my vaccination ends with a Z. So
that's actually the band that Jim and I are starting. We're going to do all Fred Durst covers.
Vaccinations. So OpenToons is available. Toon Boom is one of the biggest ones that is not Adobe, and they claim that a lot of I mean you've got The Simpsons and you've got a lot of stuff that is done on Toon Boom. They have gone to a subscription model, and from what I can tell, I would just go with Adobe if you're going to go with Toon Boom.
Yeah. Well, I mean the good thing about the suite is that if I wanted to dabble in Animate and then I choose to try After Effects or use both, I have the option.
Right.
You know what? Having it on two machines is that might be the deal breaker for me in a good way. Scott, are you right now paying for two different machines on your?
Yeah. So, this is weird. Sorry, these headphones are weird. So, I'm paying for my son, and he has a student account, so it's considerably less. And then I'm paying for myself for the two computers, but I'm thinking that I could just get the one account because he doesn't use it that much. If I can have it on three computers, because we're never doing it all at the same time. I'm definitely not working on two computers at the same time.
You can't be logged into all three.
Now, when you say logged in, does that mean?
So I can have Photoshop installed,
right?
But then log out of my Adobe account.
Yeah, because Creative Cloud's always.
You have to log out of the account. You can't. It's just not the fact that the program's not open isn't the same as being logged.
Yeah, and basically it's not like you can jump on and say log me out of that one. It's basically like a nuclear option where it logs you out of everything.
Yeah.
And then you log
But two machines is fine, right?
Two machines is fine.
Yeah, two machines no problem. I do two all the time. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, and for me, like you talked about this earlier. I mean, since I'm not really doing a lot of client work, I could probably get away with using something else. I mean, if you are doing work for ad agencies or anything else, they're probably going to expect you to deliver stuff in Adobe format,
But a lot of the other competitors to Adobe actually use Adobe formats.
So you could probably export it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in Procreate or Sketchbook,
I would want to stress test that stuff. I would want to have people opening my shit in Adobe to make sure it doesn't do anything weird. Like if I was working in a non-Adobe program and submitting stuff to people, saying it'll open with Photoshop. I really want to test that.
No, it actually saves in a PSD format.
Right, but I've had things I've played with vector files at least in
Vector's different.
Yeah, that in theory Illustrator should be able to open, and then you open it and it's like it looks like a crazy schematic, it looks bizarre, and it's because there's something lost in translation, even though in theory it's saved in the right format.
So
Ooh, sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, that just brought to mind one of the other advantages too is like if you're making stuff for manufacturing, that's the other thing about the gold standard of Adobe, especially because you have to realize that Adobe has an agreement with Pantone, so it's auto-loaded with Pantone colors, which are universal, which is great. Not all programs have accurate Pantones. And honestly, if you're working with like overseas manufacturing or anything like that, that's the gold standard they're using. If they're not using the current, they're still using like an older version of Illustrator or Photoshop. So like that's a huge thing as well.
What about performance? Like, does it perform on your computer? Well, and actually, my question from earlier, if you don't have internet somewhere.
Yeah, so once you're logged in, it certifies your initial login on the internet, but then you can go off of the internet and you're fine. It's just when you attempt to log into a third machine that you'd if you don't have the internet, it won't let you do it. But if you have the internet, it kills all three of them.
So in theory, I could be logged into, let's say, Animate, whatever, a couple of programs at home on my laptop.
Sure.
Close my laptop, go to a Starbucks, and I don't want to use their Wi-Fi, so I have no internet there. Open it up, and I can continue working.
Yeah, you'd be fine. Initially, in the first 3 months of launching Creative Cloud, that would have killed your system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should touch on the negatives though. Like, does anybody want to chime in with like their biggest gripe about?
Well, I was reading this small print. It says something about the mark of the beast.
There's that. There is that.
I think the biggest negative for me is it changes constantly. So because it's cloud based, there's no versioning. I mean, there is technically, but in my mind, I can check something out on Friday, and then go to teach it on Monday morning, and that tool will have changed. It's usually not a significant change, but sometimes it's like that worked 2 days ago and it's not doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that is super frustrating. But also mostly in a positive direction, but really annoying.
Yeah, I would say, and also if you find that a tool is missing, first thing you want to do is make sure you're in the right program. Because
Scott and I did that this morning.
Because I'm constantly I'm in Photoshop and I'm going, where's that tool? I know there's tools in here. And then I realize, that tool's only in Illustrator. So
Scott and I were doing a design cuts.
Yeah.
Scott and I were doing the design cuts live stream. And he even said that as I'm looking for the free transform tool in Photoshop, I'm like, why? Where's the freaking free transform tool? And like the shortcut isn't working and the help menu isn't helping. And he's like, are you sure it's in Photoshop? And I'm like, I know it's in it. It's not. It's an Illustrator tool. It's not a Photoshop tool. Anyway, that was very frustrating.
The micro updates are kind of a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because it's very uncommon, but not unheard of, that one of these micro updates will break something.
Yeah.
And that's infuriating when it happens to you. So
you can. The only reason that this happens to me is because normally in my daily life and things that I can control, I am not an early adopter of updates. I will wait several weeks on any phone operating system update, any operating system update, any whatever. And so I don't have my Creative Cloud set to auto update, but at work they do. And so at the teacher station when I'm teaching, I'm getting the newest thing, whether I want it or not. But the reason that I don't have it set to auto update is because I've had exactly what Gary said multiple times, where there's a new thing and it fixes this one thing or adds this new feature, but they didn't think of the effect of that thing on several other systems, and it'll break half the software.
There's a weird bug. There's a weird conflict with like whatever OS you're running and this latest version now that you don't know.
Yep.
You know. But that's pretty uncommon, but it does happen. And that's not something you'd worry about back before the subscription model.
Yeah.
Like,
so
you're talking about like hard versions, CS3, CS4, CS5, like that was not really a thing.
You're literally loading it off of a DVD, like stick the DVD physical media into your computer.
Yeah. It was
The main, like, to me, that's the biggest gripe I have is they used to have a long process of kind of like stress testing the new updates. So when they had that, it was like this rock star program, like
Yep.
that would barely require any update, if any, right?
Well, and you're getting
and
all your presents at once, as
Yeah.
opposed to a present every day. You know,
Yeah.
like it was this thing like, have you seen CS4? And you would be really excited because it was like totally new and all this cool stuff. Now you
But
get
also, all of those presents had been vetted by a process.
So that's the catch, is every once in a while you'll get an upgrade, like you'll do an update and then there's a bug and now you have to wait for the next update, which will be instantaneous. So it's better than before, where you'd have to, like, if there was a bug, you're just like, well, crap, I hope they fix this in the next version next year, right? Like now it's like there's a bug and it's fixed relatively quickly, but your day at work is going to be dealing with this annoying bug where for some reason now if I press the space bar, the hand isn't showing up to do move in vector or whatever, and it's instantly fixed the next day, but it's like a bug of just like a crappy software glitch they didn't catch, you know. That's the worst
side of that, though. Like, so for example, going back to the neural filters, they'll roll out things that they're still sort of monkeying with, that they're not saying are ready for prime time, but it's like, hey, take a look at this weird new filter we've come up with, this weird new AI thing. And you can play with it a little bit and it's kind of cool, but it's like a work in progress. And that's something that you wouldn't have had before in like full finished versions. It allows you to glimpse at where they're going and you kind of get excited. It's like, wow, once they get this working, this will be pretty cool.
What's a neural filter?
Okay, so the neural filter is going to replace most illustration of people who are not creative. Because what it is you take an illustration that is done in chalk or oil or watercolor or pen and ink or whatever, and it analyzes that, and then you put a photograph into Photoshop and you say make it look like that. And it will go and say, how are they handling the shadows? How are they handling the midtones? How are they handling the highlights? And it'll apply that to that photograph, and it looks like an illustration.
It's really cool. Like, it's really neat when you're comping photos. Like, so let's say you're putting a person, like you have a bunch of family on a beach. And it's like, hey, I wasn't able to make the vacation. So like, can you put me in with them? You can drop them in and you can tell the computer or tell Adobe, look at the beach part of this image and match the element I just added to like the light, the color tones, like all that kind of stuff, and it'll just do it all. It's pretty cool.
I haven't messed with this, so how do you access the neural filter?
It's in there.
It's in the filter drop down. You'll see neural filters as its own thing.
Gary, just be honest. Are you tampering with evidence at work? Just come on, man.
Only for the people who really,
people that I know that are
the right people. No, but another thing, like there's like smart portrait, where if it recognizes a face, it's showing it right there. You can change their expression. You can change the angle they're looking.
This is the initial photograph, and we said I want him smiling with his mouth open, and the computer goes in and does that for you.
Yeah. And a lot of it's cloud-based, so your computer isn't even doing it. It's like they've got banks somewhere, servers somewhere.
So when you, and again, not to get too sidetracked, but when you say you tell the computer, does that mean it has like a drop down, like of choices?
Yeah,
there's like
navigating it right here, like these prompts. So
like I've got this one. I've got this style transfer, right? And so if I wanted to do a style transfer of something, let me just do this. I'll take this this thing, and I'm going to go in here and I will go give me a new layer based on everything. Okay, and then I'll hide the rest of that stuff and go to filter, neural filter. And neural filter is a fancy term for all of the weird crap that we're experimenting with. It's not like a system. It's just any of these bizarre plugins. Mm-hmm. But if I go like this and I want to make it look like an impressionistic painting, it just takes that painting and applies what it thinks it should be.
It's really powerful. If you have like a portrait picture you could throw up, That's where you
Yeah.
can see some interesting things. But yeah, it's kind of like it's giving you a glimpse of like what Photoshop will probably be doing really, really well in like 3 years. And that's sort of fun. It's fun to be able to mess around with these beta level programs, you know, and see.
Well, while Corey's doing that, another question I had were, when you have programs on your computer, it obviously they take up memory like a regular installed program, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's installed and accessing the internet. So
It's not
things.
just like a browser based thing. So
I have I hate photos. I don't really have a photo.
I know it would be tough for me, but that's usually in my
Well, this is oh, that's a video. Sorry.
Corey, take a selfie.
Okay, hold on. I've got. Let me just do this. I've got something. I'll just jump onto the internet here.
I know you got like 1,000 photos of Justin Bieber. Just use one of them.
Yeah,
that's true. Just like go to your fan site, your fan website, and
we'll do this. We'll do this really vain thing, and I'll just use the picture.
There you go.
That's the picture.
There's Justin.
There's Justin Bieber. Okay, so new document. Let me switch over here and paste and filter neural filter.
And then I think it's like Smart Portrait or something.
I don't know if I have that one installed, so let me.
Yeah, it should only take a second. So
show me nude Tane.
So while you're downloading that, I am kind of curious.
Please run Celery Man.
Jim, obviously you could get by like not using the suite, right? But so far, are you seeing like any benefits that are selling you on it?
For my particular circumstances, using it on 2 machines, it could be a game changer because being able to draw the elements on my iPad and have them directly not have to airdrop one by one.
This is the worst.
That's not a good one. Make yourself really angry. Like
Corey, wait. How did you? Okay, I'm mystified by this because I haven't used this yet, and now I'm really intrigued. How are you doing this?
This is Smart Portrait. They're
filters,
they're weird, experimental, change, and you can change light direction. And
can you open the mouth open or smiling and?
I'll go surprised and happy about it.
Max it all out. Just go totally insane.
Yeah. It's really terrible. But it's because they're working on it.
That's so scary though, because that's very that's getting into deep fake territory. When they when they perfect this, we're screwed.
Okay, head direction. I don't know. It's gonna.
It might be confused by your hat. Yeah, like this and all that. But you can see how it's playing with learning how to do this.
Yeah.
And every time you do it, you sort of say how. Yeah, do you see down there? You can say how you like the result.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Right.
I had no idea about this neural filter thing. This is new to me.
So it's got a bunch of preloaded stuff in here, but I could also upload an illustration.
Yeah,
and it would try to match it.
Or another photo.
Do you have the handsome filter on? Because that guy.
So, all right, I do want to talk about alternatives.
I've got a few that I wanted to mention too. So
yeah, so Scott, let's start with you. Illustration alternatives. I feel like you've got a lot of options that you don't have to use Adobe for.
Right. My number one, especially for us comic book artists, is Clip Studio Paint, which now, right now I'm coloring in Photoshop my cover, but you can, I've seen people do amazing coloring and everything. You can pretty much do everything in Clip Studio Paint. I know Brian Allen, who we had him on the show a while back, but I don't even think he uses Adobe. He does he does crazy awesome illustrations all in Clip Studio Paint. But as far as drawing, after doing my penciling and everything in Clip Studio, I can't even be bothered with trying to do it in Photoshop. It's just it's not even close.
I would agree with you, though I don't use Clip Studio. Photoshop is like, it's not intended to be an illustration
Exactly,
tool.
right.
Yeah.
Where Clip Studio is designed for making comics and drawing and inking, and I mean the inking, I mean it's so clean. The G pen in Clip Studio, there's nothing. I mean, I like, especially now that I'm getting a little older and my hands are a little wobbly. There's just, the out of the box setting. I mean, I'm sure you could tweak other programs and get it to a certain way you like it, but just out of the box, that G pen and Clip Studio, it's just perfect. There's just a tiny slight bit of correction, and
So
I don't
what's the deal with Clip Studio? Is it a single pay? Is it a
yes. So desktop version, it's single pay. There's a $50 version, and I think it pretty much has everything you need. I've got I got the deluxe version. It's weird. I think Clip Studio Paint Pro is this cheaper version, but when I think Pro, I think that should be the better version. So it's really weird the way it's named. It used to be Manga Studio. I don't even know at Clip Studio why they renamed it. So all that stuff's kind of bizarre and weird. And
I was confused about that. I was like, how is it related to Manga Studio?
Yeah, it is Manga Studio.
It is
I don't know
Manga
why
Studio.
they changed it, but
By the way,
it's
that's
the
a
same
terrible
program.
name, Clip Studio Pro.
What's that?
The name Clip Studio Pro, I've always thought was like a terrible. They could have just called it something else. They could have called it like Wazami.
But
right.
So I have a question
they have-
as a non I am very Adobe based, right? So how is the kind of interplay between Clip Studio and say Photoshop or something? Let's say I wanted to do color in Photoshop and inks in Clip Studio or something.
So it's not that's the part that if I was going to say what hopefully they can improve sometime in Clip Studio, you can't export a layered file.
Ooh.
It sucks.
Oh, it won't take layers. Okay.
Yeah, and it's got weird vector functionality. I don't use the vector stuff, but it's got where you can draw, almost like you would in sort of a raster program, and then you can actually, if it's a vector line, you can adjust your lines after you draw them and stuff like that. I don't really deal with any of that, but yeah. So when I'll basically what I do is I do all my penciling, and if I'm doing digital inks, I'll do that all in Clip Studio, and I'll just flatten the file and I'll export it in the color in Photoshop. But I really should start learning how to color in Clip Studio, because you can do the same stuff in there. But going back to what I was saying before about the two different versions, I think the $50 version, and it's $50, it's not a month or anything. It's $50, and you have the program until you upgrade. And they're not like some of these other software where they've got to update every year or something. It's very rarely that they have a new update, so you don't have to keep upgrading and upgrading. So I would probably recommend just getting that cheaper version. The only thing is, if you're working on a mobile device, then it's a subscription, which is kind of weird. So I don't have it for my iPad, because it is. I could probably justify it myself because I like the program so much. But if you are working on a mobile device, so for you, Jim, if you're working on your iPad, Clip Studio probably isn't because it is another subscription.
But it is something. It is something on the iPad, because that's where I thought it had a subscription. On the iPad, it's like you can use it for a certain amount of time every day for free.
Oh,
okay.
And then
after that, they start wanting. So there's and I don't know how much time it is.
Yeah.
But it does do animation. But Jim and I do a style of animation called puppet animation, which really is more of an After Effects thing, and this is more of a traditional animation suite. It's like you're seeing animation.
Is that Clip Studio that you're looking at?
Yeah.
I don't get. I just draw and do comics in it, but it's got all kinds of cool tools for panels. Oh, and the perspective stuff in Clip Studio, it is amazing. I would never even attempt to rule out stuff in Photoshop or anything like that. I mean, Clip Studio, you basically create these grids and everything will snap to the grid in perspective. I mean, it's just amazing. There's so many tools, but anyway, I mean, you can look into that if you want.
I wouldn't even know how to approach perspective in Photoshop. Now
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've got like perspective grids and like some of my kits and things that you can use.
Yeah.
But yeah, clips. Yeah.
What's perspective? Tell me about this.
Something that the
refer to
Egyptians couldn't understand.
episode, any episode with David Chelsea on it. We'll talk
Right.
That's true. We should have him back on. I'll try to reach out.
Yeah.
Fun
So here's what Scott's talking about. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but this has perspective grid in it, and there's a couple pieces of software that do this. The Clip Studio is the one that does it really, really well. But another one that does the same thing and is free is it used to be done by Autodesk, but it's Sketchbook, and I used to do all of my illustrations in Sketchbook on the iPad, and it's free and it's phenomenal. Though you do run the risk of losing everything that you made in it every once in a while, and so it's kind of living on the edge. But what it does do really well is at any point in time you can just upload a PSD of what you're working on in layers to like a Google Drive, and so I've just started backing everything up. But I used it quite a bit for a long time. But Clip Studio is awesome.
Yeah. Another one that I wanted to mention, I started using this a little bit when I was first trying to test out a mobile situation. It's called Photopea. Have you heard of this?
How do you spell it?
It's photo and then P, like P that you eat like with carrots.
Okay.
PEA. So
it's not PEE, right? It's
right.
That kind of P that you can eat with carrots.
So it is. I don't even know how they get away with it, but it is a Photoshop clone almost to a T. And
wait, I'm sorry, I'm immature. Scott, can you tell me the name of that again?
What's that?
One more time. Can you just say the name of it? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so immature.
So it is. It's like a Photoshop clone. I mean, if you work in Photoshop, you almost don't know the difference. The only thing is you can see it's got these ads that run on the side, so your real estate is kind of tiny. So I figured, and you can import Photoshop files, and they'll open up fine. You can export them as Photoshop files, and I haven't.
Wait, is it browser based?
It's all browser based. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's free. The only problem is you've got those ads that run on it. Yeah, and I mean, I could even pay. I mean, it might even pay like if it was a one-time fee for a small amount just to get rid of them. It might be something you would do. The only thing, and I thought it'd be good like in a pinch, So you
wait to pee in a pinch. Sorry, I can't get over the name.
Wait, are you sure it's not pronounced Photopea?
I've always heard it pronounced Photopea.
Maybe it's
I'll just say Photopea. So
I'm so sorry. I'm so immature. I'm trying really hard. Sorry, I'm gonna mute myself.
So are you saying there isn't an option to pay to get rid of those ads?
I don't know if there is or not.
That's crazy.
Oh, look at Photopea has another product called Pissastrator.
But the one thing I did have problems with, and maybe it's just because I didn't figure out how to do it, but I mean, I could have probably maybe researched and figured. I had some problems because I was, for a while, when I went to California or whatever, and I had to do like the thumbnail for Artcasters.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get, even though I had the fonts loaded on my computer, I couldn't get them to show up, and it was driving me crazy. So in Photopea.
How are they doing pressure sensitivity?
What?
They're doing pressure sensitivity on a browser.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. In theory, I could try to draw something in that and then import it into Photoshop and animate it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That might be worth.
It's crazy, but like I said, the real estate. I mean, I'm kind of used to. Even the setup that I got right now is just a tiny bit smaller. Like this tablet is a tiny bit smaller than my Cintiq, and it's still like I have to, because I like to have all my menu. I like my little toolboxes open.
Yeah.
But now I've got to open one and close it. Switch back and forth. And
Scott, can you save templates on it, like template sizes, like when you logged into it or something?
What do you mean?
could you save like a template size?
You
a
can
canvas
basically
size?
do anything you can do in Photoshop. It's
But I mean, you can
Photoshop.
save
Wow.
when you log in. It saves your settings from last time or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I forgot how that works. I don't remember. I've only used it a little bit because like now I eventually just bought an extra version of
Interesting.
Photoshop or
Yeah.
the Creative Suite, but yeah. So I mean that's
Wait, guys. I want to know what's being advertised on the right over there. It looks like compelling content.
Depends.
Squarespace.
I was gonna say, I think that's their alternate photo poop, which is man,
Oh,
who
that
in
is
marketing? I'm
fascinating.
sorry, who in marketing was like, we need to call this photo P because that's gonna sound great. Like recommended.
Oh man.
Anyhow,
I
but
can't
that
make this
is
bigger.
really incredible.
That's,
so you
that's
just-
crazy.
Kind of intriguing.
So it has full functionality, but you just have to deal with ads. Is this something like David was talking? David Hartman when he was on? Is this the program? he was
I don't
using?
think I don't think he mentioned some other ones, but
Okay,
yeah.
because he was using one that had ads too, so that's why. Huh. That's cool.
I mean, it opened a Photoshop document of mine, and I'm editing the layers right now.
yeah,
That's unbelievable.
As I thought of that
In
though,
that browser. That's great.
Unbelievable.
Procreate can also export as Photoshop documents,
Yeah.
so that really makes sense. Then.
Yeah.
Is it laggy? Like I don't understand how it's working in a browser with all that functionality.
It is not lagging. I mean, you can see me drawing these lines. If there's zero lag.
That's
It's like
amazing.
it's low latency. That's pretty slick, dude.
Because like
No,
I know Shutterfly has if you want to make a photo book on Shutterfly, they have this weird kind of hacked Adobe InDesign that's browser based. And that's basically what you're using to put together your photo book. And at least I haven't used it in a couple of years, but it was rough as hell. And InDesign isn't as demanding as Photoshop. So like I'm kind of impressed that they even get this thing working.
Okay, now that it's a little laggy now that I've made the brush bigger, but not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I would, I mean, obviously, if you don't have Photoshop and you kind of want to learn Photoshop, you can learn on this and you'll know Photoshop. Or, it's a cheaper alternative if you want to deal with those ads. Or if you use Adobe Photoshop and you're just in a place where you've got a file and you don't have your software with you, then you can open it up and do your work on this.
Or if you
cool
just
is
like
that?
me,
Premium will get rid of the ads for $3 a month.
Okay, so there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And again, I don't know how they don't get shut down because they basically ripped off Photoshop almost to a T. I mean, every tool is in the tools may be slightly, the icons may be slightly.
Like the toolbar looks the same. Like
They're
they're
in the same order.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Yeah,
nuts.
has Adobe like sent them a CMD letter? I mean, what?
Probably, but I don't know.
I'll tell you. I don't think Adobe will because Adobe does not care about illustrators at all.
Yeah,
illustrators are like ugly bastard children of Adobe. They just.
I will say Fresco is
that
supposed to be their answer to that. Like that's one of the things they're doing with Fresco is they're trying to kind of hit that market
Make
they've
that
been ignoring.
Fresco is I do 80% of my illustration on Fresco on my iPad now.
That's awesome. I need to dip into Fresco.
I
need to get an iPad, you guys. I need to wake up and get technologically savvy here.
It's pretty legit, dude. Like you can all of the cool pencil stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
On a Cintiq or an Intuos or whatever, but with an Apple Pencil and portable, and so you could lay out all of your pages and it'll print big and stuff. But like the iPad Pro, I don't know what they've done to that thing. It handles some huge files. I remember when I first got it, I would shoot like 60 minutes of 4K video of me inking something, and I'd open that up on my monster PC and it would choke on it hard. I would edit it on the iPad and it was smooth with no lag. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
They're really, really incredible machines. Yeah, I would also say Procreate and Affinity Designer. Affinity Designer is pretty cool. I wonder if, do I have that on here?
I'm down with Procreate. The only thing I don't like about Procreate is it cuts off at the edges, you know.
Yeah.
I remember you told me that, and that would be a deal breaker for me. But
Yeah, that's a bummer, but everything else on it is amazing and works really well with Photoshop.
Awesome.
That's why I was thinking, I wonder if I should experiment. I don't know if there's a trial of Photoshop for the iPad, but I want to see what it feels like to draw in Photoshop on the iPad. If it says
their trial periods are available, but they're super short now.
yeah,
well, I just would like to just try it out to see if it feels anywhere as good as. I mean, you can tell me. Do you think it's comparable to Procreate, the line quality and things like that?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the mobile version of Photoshop, but it's good.
All right.
It's good. I like the brush engine. I think I like the brush engine in Fresco the best. I would take the brush engine in. I'd take the brush engine in Procreate over the mobile version of Photoshop. So,
Gary, what about you? Have you tried the Photoshop iPad version?
I'm sorry. Did you?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I am iPadless. So.
Yeah, me too.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
Better get padded up.
I think this is the type of thing where we could continue to talk about this for the next 9 years. And I just realized that we're approaching an hour and 45 minutes. So
wrap it
anyway,
up. Wrap it up, fellas.
Yeah, but I would take, if you're looking for something not Adobe, but you want to be able to do vector and raster images, I would look heavily at Affinity Designer. They're really good, and I think they're only going to get better. But they're super good, and you can do a lot of really cool stuff on them.
Yep.
But you do have the downside of what we talked about at the beginning, where you get really good at Affinity Designer, and then you try to get a job with Josh or Gary or me, and I'm like, we're an Adobe shop, you know.
Yeah. And we don't want to teach you Adobe 101.
Right. So
you need to be able to hit the ground running. But not everyone, like Jim's a perfect example. Not everyone's like dreaming of working for Josh. You're probably fine.
Also, I want to throw out there too, just so as not to come off as unrealistic or elitist, I think as long as you're adaptable and you can learn quickly, I will reveal a secret that I've revealed before, but it's like my first in-house design job. I knew Photoshop really well, and I didn't know Illustrator at all. And when I did my interview, they were like, we primarily work in Adobe Illustrator, and you know that, right? And I was like, 100%. I totally do. And I learned on the job, and within a week, I had the program memorized. Like, you can. I'm not. Don't do that to me. But I'm just saying. I'm just saying that like it's not like these programs define the artist, and I think like all of us would be in agreement with that. And if you came out of this thinking like, oh, I got to get Illustrator and Photoshop and like. And After Effects, because that's going to teach me how to animate or how to draw or how to design. And it's like, no, those foundations, that's the stuff you got to get down, because all of this stuff, like 10 years from now, people might look back on this video and be like, dude, these guys are so out of date. They're talking about Adobe.
Right.
You know,
right.
And there were a lot of guys, we've talked about this with software, who banked their careers on like, I know Quark. And like they weren't decent designers. They just knew Quark. And
in
like
10 years, they'll look back at this video and go, man, they all had hair.
Yeah, that's true.
Look at how thin they all were. Like what was? Well, no, and it's not an Adobe product, but I can say, like with my day job, when I got hired at my day job, we make virtual like 3D recreations of crime scenes in SketchUp.
Oh, SketchUp's amazing.
SketchUp is great. I love SketchUp, but I had never used SketchUp before in my life. But what's amazing about this era we live in, If you go onto YouTube, like I said before, there's some 13-year-old who will walk you through every step of learning a program. And if you're like, if you can learn, if you're focused, in a week or two, you can be pretty competent. I would just go ahead and say with any program.
Gary, you got to stop watching those 13-year-old videos. Okay, we already had this discation.
Gary, there are 42-year-olds who will teach
and
you.
Like, I'm not. Yeah.
I will say this as well. So just to kind of bring this home for Jim, the one thing that I think you're not going to find outside of Adobe is
friendship.
Yes,
that's true.
The magic of friendship.
It's true.
No, is a good animation thing that does the type of animation that you and I do. And so that brings me back to, you could do something like this, where you have you choose Animate or After Effects for $21 a month, and then you do all of your other illustration stuff on something that
the way you're doing it now,
Scott is talking about, or what I'm talking about. I would get away from Procreate because of the way it clips your edges. It works really well. It works really well for illustration, but it doesn't work really well for creating assets for animation because of the clipping. And so you could use Fresco, you could use whatever, or buy Clip Studio, or get Affinity Designer for $22 for the iPad one time.
Or Photo.
I was going to throw out there, and Corey, you can tell me if this, because I don't understand. I don't do a lot of what you guys are doing with the animation, but my impression is that I would try to see if you can make Animate and Photoshop work, because that's $30 a month. You're not doing the full suite for $50. And that seems like that would cover most, like Animate's going to be very comparable to Flash.
Yeah.
Right. And Photoshop would get you around the clipping issues. Not ideal for illustration, but it's only $9 a month. You know, so I think that might be a way to ease in and see, but I don't know.
That might be an option. 30 is better than 50. I learned that in 4th grade.
That's good to know. But if you get this, it comes with 100 gigabytes of cloud storage, and I want to see if it comes with any of the mobile stuff. It comes with Premiere Rush and Photoshop Express. I don't know if Photoshop Express has brushes. I'm not sure, but that might be the answer, because it could give you what you need.
The one thing that's great about the subscription thing too is this is a benefit of it. The downside is you end up spending in the long run a hell of a lot more than you would have back in the day when you were buying software, right?
Yes.
But the upside is, let's say you try it out for a month and you're like, this sucks. You can cancel your subscription and you're out $50. Whereas before, if you bought the suite, you'd be dropping $800 to $2,000. And this is 10 years ago when $802,000 was a much bigger expense. And it's that's, so you're out less to I it out. And I'd encourage people to try it. Like I said, my wife was very traditional artist and stuff like that. And now she's, like I said, she started with Photoshop and then kind of expanded the suite from there. Mm-hmm. And again, you do book layout, trying to kind of piece it together with Acrobat or something, which is another Adobe program, by the way. But the second you actually do a book layout in InDesign, and then just the export functionality alone, you're going to be oh my gosh, why have I been using all these PDF creators and stuff like that? It's so much better. Adobe's like that with everything, So
all right, one last question for me. File storage. If you get the $50, does it come with file storage?
Yeah. I wouldn't personally. I'm just going to give my own opinion. I don't mess with the cloud with file storage. I always have hard copies of things. I'll have a cloud backup, but to me, this to me would be where I get all Corey Kerr about stuff. It's to me, I don't want to trust my files, because now Adobe's in a situation of it'd be a shame if something happened to your files.
So if I created,
I don't
if I were to create the artwork on my iPad, let's say in Photoshop, how am I getting it? Am I still airdropping it? like I'm doing now.
You
It's
probably
cloud- it's
upload to the
cloud-based.
cloud and pull it down on your
Yeah.
on your second
So,
device.
I mean, it does give you cloud storage somehow.
You have 100 gigabytes of cloud storage with
That's pretty good.
with any of the things that you do. But like Josh is saying, you can download any of those. So by default, if you're on an iPad, you're on the cloud, and it'll save it to the cloud. It doesn't save it to your iPad. It saves it to the cloud, and then you have a local copy on your iPad that it's working from. But it saves. It doesn't even ask you if you want to save. It automatically saves it to the cloud all the time. And then if you open that up it'll do this where it's like it'll come in and it'll say I'll go to save this, and it gives me this little prompt. Here's all the benefits of saving to the cloud. You've got version history and auto saving every change, blah 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 blah. But they do have your files hostage at that point. So, but it makes it super easy to go from multiple devices. And so if you got your laptop, desktop, and iPad, and you're working on one Photoshop file, all three of those will have access.
Yeah,
to it.
and you can just use it for temporary storage too. Like you can back it up permanently somewhere else.
Yes.
Right.
That's just how I use it. And I kind of use it as a place to hold stuff before I'm backing it up in like 3 different other places.
Back it up, back it up.
Like I'm really like, I mean, Josh was making fun of me, but I am actually really paranoid. And so I have a wallet specifically full of micro SDs of all of my important files that I keep with me. And so
by the way, if it sounded like that was something I was making fun of Corey for, I don't think that's a bad, like all you have to do, and I'm going to throw that out there. Like, okay, so I'm working on all digitally on a graphic novel, and what I usually have going is like, I have like a Carbonite backup, and then I have my main computer, and I have like a backup external. I went and got a second external. So I have a time machine running. I have a physical hard copy. I have it backed up in the cloud, and I have on my hard drive. So it's like I literally have 4 copies, because here's the thing. If I'm going to do a 200 and something page book and then like halfway through the year lose 100 pages and have to answer to a publisher for that, they aren't going to care that I didn't have backups. And all it takes is one time of losing mass amounts of files, and you will constantly be paranoid about it. You need hard copies, you need cloud copies.
Yeah, no, I have every copy of D versus M there's one on my like normal computer hard drive, there's one in the backup external drive, there's one on the Google Drive, there's one like it's all getting spread everywhere, just so like, and it's always just thinking like if the place burned down, like, or if the computer got stolen, or if this thing got hacked, or
it'd be a shame if something would have happened to those files there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and it's the same thing. I had, before I switched to Mac, I had a PC, I had a bunch of art and photos and everything on it. The hard drive died and it was all just gone.
Yep.
And that only has to happen once before you're like, okay, never again.
Corey,
especially if you're freelance.
Corey, to say that friendship line so you can end the show.
I tried to, but then everybody wanted to keep talking.
Okay,
that's fine. I don't have anywhere to go, so
all right, let's re-tee it up. What do you guys think? Like, just overall, all the Adobe programs, those are really important. But what's the most important thing? Jim, could you answer that? Like, what would you say? Like, more important than programs, art, like our technical abilities. What do you think is the most important skill or the most important thing?
To crush your enemies.
Drink the blood.
Hear the lamentations of their women.
And to have good file backup.
Yeah. Gary, where can people find your stuff?
They can find me on Instagram at Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs Marsbots. You see it clipped right here, but that's right there. You can find me on YouTube under my name, Gary Hodges, and big announcement starting this Saturday, 11 a.m. Arizona and Pacific time. I'm going to start live streaming. Saturday mornings is when I start a new page of D versus M. So I'll be logging on for a couple hours and talking, show up in the chat, let's visit a little bit while I start my day.
Cool. And Jim, where can we find your stuff?
Well, since I'm thinking about getting the Creative Cloud, you guys can find me on Patreon and become my patron. I'm going to need your money more than ever. Look to me in my eyes. But patreon.com/Jim Lujan, or just go to jimlujan.com, and you can watch my movies there.
Awesome. And Josh, where can we find your many books?
Okay, so you can watch me live streaming as I'm illustrating crazy things. Let me see if I can share this real quick. Is this going to work? No, it's not going to work. Never mind. I'll share it some other time. So, yeah, you can watch me do live streams while I'm working on the current book, which is like a book about the Brownings called Not Death But Love. And it's a really fun thing to kind of hang out on live stream. So make sure you check out my YouTube channel, Joshua Kimball, and then also buy my book about faith and mental illness, 2 Stories, which is out now on Amazon. And also make sure you go to your local bookstore and ask them to order Jacob's Apartment. It's coming out in June. If you're a fan of like Eternal Sunshine or The Spotless Mind or Ghost World or that like kind of cool doomed romance slice of life book, this book will be a really good one. And it's 132 full color pages and out soon. So go to your local bookstore and ask them, carry Jacob's Apartment by Joshua Kimball. And yeah, that'll do it.
And I want to reiterate that I can't stress enough how important it is. Every single store that orders those books is a really big deal.
Yep.
And so that really helps. Mm-hmm. You can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. If you want to go to CoreyKerr.com/online, then you can see where I am on Instagram and Behance and YouTube, and you can sign up for my email newsletter. And if you want to look at animations and stuff, that's on that website as well. I'm actually kind of curious, for those of you that are currently in the chat and for those of you that are watching this after the fact, what did you think of having all the plugs at the end versus the beginning? I know that there's pluses and minuses of doing those things, so let us know in either the comments or the chat, depending on whether you are watching now or watching in the future. And Scott, where can we find your stuff, and how do we do this crazy Artcaster thing?
Okay, you can find my stuff at circworks.com. I've got digital products, including my comic book, Young and the Dead, both digital and physical copies available up there. Or you can find me on my YouTube channel, where I have a series called Making Comics 101. Everything you want to know about making comics, everything from coming up with the idea to printing, publishing, and every step in between. So definitely check out my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And this show that we do, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. Usually we have a different guest. This week we have 2 guests, a different topic. Like I said, it's usually on a Thursday, but it could be, maybe one day we do it on a Wednesday or whatever. But the point is, it can get confusing because there's all this information. Oh, and we switch channels. It's on Corey's channel this week. I think next week it'll be on my channel, and then Josh, and then. But who knows? That can get a little confusing. But if you don't want to get confused, then what you want to do is subscribe to our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. We just send, usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out a link where you can join us and join us in the chat, and you always be in the know. So there you go.
Awesome. And I will also say that along those lines, we will continue to do live streams on everybody's kind of channels, and so watch Josh and Scott and myself and Gary. You're going to start doing live streams as well.
Yes, I am. Saturday.
Right, cool.
11 a.m.
Yes.
Saturday. That's awesome. Great.
Well, I'll probably stop by and if
everyone's invited,
people hanging
drop
too.
in. Some days I'll probably have a topic to rant on. Some days I'll probably just feel like just talking while I'm setting up my page. So,
yeah. And Scott and I was on. Scott invited me to do a Design Cuts live stream that we did this morning. Check that out. We're using one of Scott's digital products, and it actually really liked it. It was fun to be able to just it simplified a lot of the stuff that was going on. And next Thursday morning, we are going to be doing the follow up to that, where we're going to animate the assets that we made. And so if you want to watch that, you can go to Design Cuts. I think it's just designcuts.com.
Yeah,
right?
Go to designcuts.com and click on, I think it's learning or education or something like that, and you'll see it. And then click on the thumbnail, and there'll be a thing to register So you just register to be in on it, and they'll alert you when we go live and everything.
It'd be really fun to have Artcasters people in the
Oh,
design.
yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be really cool.
You
So
go,
if anybody,
Corey, you animate the assets off that thing.
Nice
and
asset.
before Gary and Jim continue down the back end asset jokes, I am going to close this off, and we will see you guys. Is anybody streaming after this?
I thought my comment was really good in the chat. It
was fantastic.
I am likely doing a crazy Elizabeth Barrett Browning related comic stream in about 30 minutes from now. So.
Okay, so either on Josh's channel or my channel or something, somebody's going to be streaming at some point.
Someone will be streaming somewhere.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for letting us know in the chats. Let us know what you think, Adobe or not Adobe, and we'll see you guys next week.
Wait.